Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's presentation. My name is Meredith Outerson, and I'm part of the webinar technical support team at ERG, which is a contractor supporting this series. Before we get started, let's review a few housekeeping items. Audio is available for this presentation through your computer's mic and speakers or by telephone, and your call-in number as well as your access code will be in the control panel box on the right-hand side of your screen if you need those. All attendees have been muted to minimize background noise, and this webinar will be recorded. We'll have several panelists today giving a short talk about their work, and we'll introduce them in just a moment. If you have a question during the presentation, you can ask it in two ways. You can either type it into the questions box on the upper right-hand side of your screen, or you can raise your virtual hand, and then I'll call on you and unmute you to ask your question out loud. Questions can be targeted to a specific panelist or more broadly to all of the panelists. And we will hold most questions until the end of the webinar for a larger Q&A session. If you are experiencing any technical difficulties at any time, please contact me via chat and I will do my best to troubleshoot the issue. And that's everything for housekeeping now, so I'll turn it over to Natalie Hummel from EPA.
Thank you, Meredith. Welcome, everyone, to EPA's pollution prevention webinar. We're talking today on a very important issue that has been brought to everyone's attention, and it should be really relevant to everyone in the audience. We'll be talking today about remote technical assistance in COVID and beyond. This is a webinar that is part of a P2 EPA webinar series. It's hosted by EPA, and what these webinars are designed to do is to share information, amplify our work, and examine best practices across grants and other projects. As many know, EPA issues grants to states and other organizations to conduct technical assistance, which usually occurs on site. But in the world we're living in today, that's changing drastically. So I'd like to hand it back over to Meredith for our first poll question. If you could.
Oh, right.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say the poll is open now, so go ahead and vote. Great, so I'll just give you one more moment to vote. Your last chance if you haven't already. Here are the results.
Okay, great. So as expected, we do have a lot of P2 technical assistance providers in the audience, coming in at 53%. And next we have consultants and current grantees, and we have MAPs as well. And that is manufacturing extension partnerships. So with COVID, many grantees have asked for information on conducting technical assistance remotely or virtually. We do have one additional poll that Meredith will do at this point to give us a better understanding of how you will use this information.
Great, so I'm seeing lots of votes already. That's awesome. So please go ahead and vote if you haven't already. Great. Here are the results.
Yeah, I'll go ahead now. So we have a significant amount of people that are planning on doing the assessment. So this walkthrough today and sharing of the webinar will be really helpful. And then we have the next category, we have quite a few individuals that have already conducted that. You can go back to the other slide. So today we're really going to share some tips, resources, and best practices and kind of examine what works and what does not work. And this is building on an October grantee meeting that we had with our grantees, and COVID and technical assistance was a very hot topic. And we've also had other regions step up to the plate to do these webinars as well. Another goal is we'd like to establish a community of technical assistance providers who work remotely and to share information. Next slide. Next slide. Oh, thank you. So as you know, there's a lot of benefits of doing things remotely. We can not only protect the public health, but it eliminates the need for public screening protocols for getting into the facility, etc. There's also a lot of individuals that may have some budget restrictions for travel and may not be comfortable with traveling themselves. It's also, I think, going to be interesting today because there's a lot of service providers that participate in these remote assessments, and they can provide their expertise. And that expertise, can come from a wide range of clients, from utilities to municipalities to the MEPs mentioned before, to the IACs and lead service providers, as well as the interns that would like to do and learn and grow in this area. So now I'd like to turn this presentation over to OTA. We're going to be talking with Jack, but let me just introduce the presenters really quick. We have Jack Illingworth. He's an environmental analyst with the Massachusetts Office of Technical Assistance. We are pleased to also have John Rachko. He is a PhD and a senior engineer, at Massachusetts OTA. And we have Michelle Gaither, who is an industrial engineer from PPRC. So now we're going to turn it over to Jack, and he'll take over the presentation from here. So welcome, everyone.
All right. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having us. Let me get this opened up here. So good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are. I'd like to thank the EPA and the Pacific Northwest Pollution Prevention Resource Center for putting this together. My name is Jack Illingworth. Joining me will be my colleague, John Rachko. We are from the Massachusetts Office of Technical Assistance. What it is we are, I got things jumping on my screen here. So we're an assistance agency that came out of the Toxic Use Reduction Act that was passed by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts in 1990. The idea behind the act was to charge large manufacturers fees for use of certain chemicals. And there's three branches of it. There's the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection, which is the enforcement and regulatory side of the act. There's also the Toxic Use Reduction Institute, which was it's a laboratory that does experiments and cleaner chemicals and greener chemicals and that type of thing to assist companies, again, free of charge. And then there's us, which is the Office of Technical Assistance, or OTA. We are non-regulatory, and most of our stuff is done on-site, or had been done on-site, to give assistance to these manufacturers to help them reduce their hazardous chemicals and stay in compliance with the regulations. Typically, we go out, work with companies to help identify opportunities to reduce the risk associated with a lot of the hazardous chemicals that are out there. And we help them to reduce employees' exposures and provide a safer workspace. In addition, we also address safety issues when we see them. and we help to reduce overhead costs with energy, water, and materials conservation. So how we got here? As we all know, March of this year, everything, excuse me, kind of came to a screaming halt. And currently, we're not permitted to do any on-site work, whether it's inspections or assistance or, excuse me, auditing or anything. Excuse me, I get tickles here. Other agencies are doing drive-by inspections or desk audits of paperwork and permits. Excuse me. And because we're non-regulatory, we really can't do that. In addition, there was some increased concerns related to the exposure to cleaning chemicals. So we needed a way to identify, to continue assisting companies that were open without actually going on site. In addition to the fact that we weren't allowed to, there were a few other things we were concerned about. One is the liability of going to another site, whether we would unknowingly bring COVID into a workplace, or whether we would catch it at a workplace. We just didn't want to kind of be in that situation. And then there's the logistics of it. Most companies have restricted access to their facilities right now. And it'd be kind of hard to figure out where to have meetings, open, closed meetings, based on the guidelines that are out there. If you're inside, you're in close quarters, can you, maintain your 6 feet, that type of stuff. We could meet outside, but then, especially up here in the Northeast where we are, there's weather concerns. Plenty of space, but it's like a day like today where it's snowing. It's not the greatest time to meet outside. In addition to that, PPE and safety concerns around being inside facilities, masks, what are we going to wear? What do we need to wear? And at the time, there was a big shortage. So we really didn't have the ability to do it. And nobody really wants to be or be labeled, a spreader of this virus. So best choice was to just, we thought, do remote site visits. We felt this would be fairly easily done using technologies that are available to almost everyone. Zoom, MS Teams, Duo, FaceTime, they're all out there. They're all, available to people at pretty much no cost to the companies. Some of the things we felt we had to address specifically is maintaining confidentiality, which is a big part of our process, is we're completely confidential. And how to get information that is normally shared person to person when we do these meetings. Things like MSDSs and floor plans, flow charts, that type of thing. So it was kind of difficult. And how many attendees do we have? Typically you got a big group of people. There's a lot of knowledge that's kind of spread out through a facility. So, how do you manage that? And how to do the tour? Do we just kind of do a general visit? Do we walk through the whole facility, kind of look at everything? And it's kind of tough to do with a camera. Or should we do a focus tour and just look at, specific areas of concerns? So we came up with a process. I'll hand it off to John now, who's going to give you a little more information about the process that we used and how things went. So John Mashko.
Thanks, Jack. Good afternoon, everybody. So after considering all these issues, we thought one of the, a good starting place for developing, a protocol for doing remote visits would be to see, what other kinds of organizations are doing in this, in this arena. So we looked at the regulatory agency here in Massachusetts, the Department of Environmental Protection, which doesn't do the same kind of visit we do, but we learned that they weren't doing any kind of on-site inspections and had no plans to do anything of a virtual nature. The same was the case with the federal DOE-funded Industrial Assessment Center, which is based at one of the University of Massachusetts campuses. Anybody who's if you're not familiar with the IACs, they provide free energy audits to industrial facilities. They were also not doing anything virtually, nor did they have any plans to do so. One of the things that was kind of interesting that we found on a local level is that some of the utilities here in Massachusetts were actually offering virtual audits to residential customers as part of their energy efficiency incentive program here in the state, which was based on, an auditor over the phone directing the homeowner around their house to show the auditor, various parts of the home, the equipment in the home and so forth. We also came across some consultants that were for larger facilities had developed the capabilities and were conducting virtual EHS audits. So building on this kind of information, we did put together an approach. And what I'm going to discuss is really, the final approach that we've developed. There was a learning curve on this, some trial and error. But what we came up with was something that we found works pretty well. The main thing that we did was put together several documents. One of them that's key to this whole effort is an internal guidance document that we put together for OTA staff to lay out the steps involved with planning and conducting the remote visits. What we decided to do was, as far as the initial part of the process of having an interested facility contact us about doing a visit, we didn't, we figured we could still use our standard intake process, didn't have to reinvent the wheel there. It was something we call a pre-visit questionnaire that we send out to facilities, getting contact information, but also some specifics on the kind of assistance they're requesting for us, some information on regulatory background, permits and so on, chemical use. If it's an energy focused visit, we get specific information on their energy use and energy providers. One of the things that's really important, though, in doing virtual visits as opposed to remote visits is, having very good communication with the companies up front, during this planning process, because this is the point where you want to really discuss the specifics of the visit, so that you know exactly what is going to happen. You can't really be as maybe on the fly as you can on a on-site visit. So we decided that it would probably make more sense, to not do general, complete facility visits, but identify with the company specific focus areas that they were concerned about. We did maintain the same kind of structure to an on-site visit for the remote visits, where we typically have an opening meeting with the facility staff. This is something that would either take place in somebody's office or a conference room if there's several people involved. We transition to the facility tour, where there's one person that is using a phone or a tablet with the camera, guiding us around the facility, to agreed upon areas within the facility. And then once that's complete, we'll reconvene in the office or a conference room at the facility and have a typical closing meeting. that we always have with an on-site visit, discussing, next steps, additional information we might want to see, that sort of thing. Also, during the planning phase, we found that it's very important to focus on, getting the kind of information we would consider to be necessary to do the visit up front, from the company. Things like the attendees. Oh, not quite ready, Jack. Having the facility identify the attendees, documentation that we'd like to get, SDSs, facility layouts, and the like. And we also spend time up front, going over, what the protocol is going to be with the facilities. The fact that we're going to be using software like, Zoom and Teams. We find that most companies are already familiar with those kinds of softwares. We've found through trial and error that having the person leading the tour at the facility wear a headset really improves audio quality and eliminates background noise, which might get in the way of communication back to us. Cameras on phones and tablets are very adequate, we found, and we came up with some best practices that I'll talk about in a few minutes. But one of the key things that we're not doing is recording the visits. This is because of the confidentiality that we have, and it's something that we stress with companies that we're not going to do. So I'll transition now to a couple of other documents that we prepared that we send out to the companies. And the first one of these is what we call our site visit preparation template. And both of these documents that I'm going to talk about are, they've been included as handouts. I guess back at the GoToWebinar control panel there, you can find them for download. So this is a single page fillable PDF document. Most of the filling out is done by OTA staff. This is something that we send out to the company to request, the specific information that we need prior to the visit. I'm not sure it comes through very well on the slide, but there's lightly shaded or shaded light blue boxes are what the OTA staff will fill out at the top of the form. Standard information about the name of the company, who the OTA staff are that are going to be involved. And then the yellow boxes are, what the company is going to fill in, and when they return the form to us. So it's the contact information for the main company contact, phone, email, and the like. The bottom half of the form is dedicated to outlining the specific kind of information we'd like the company to provide to us. So again, most of the boxes here are going to be completed by OTA staff. We are identifying the staff person and their contact information, who the company should send the information to. We give them until a week before the scheduled site visit, the virtual visit, to get us the information. So this is where we're specifying any kinds of SDSs or maybe photos of product labels if the company doesn't have an SDS for the chemical, which they should have. Any kind of photos of parts of the facility, that we want to, we'll be looking at, or particular pieces of equipment. Process flow diagrams from the company, a facility floor plan, with something we find very, very important to have beforehand. And then, we leave space, for any other specific information we think would be useful to get from the company beforehand. And at the bottom of the form, we make reference to what we call our virtual site visit instructions. And this is really a compilation that we put together after doing several of these visits, outlining, I guess, what we would call tips and best practices for conducting these visits. So I'm going to go through a couple of sections on that. This is a 2-page document, and I'm going to be talking a little bit about some of the I'll say the key information that we have in this document that's highlighted. And going on to the next slide, this is talking about some of the important things to do before the visit. Just as this is really addressing the technology. So we just want to make sure that people have their smartphone or the tablet they're going to use for the tour part. Make sure it's fully charged. Have Zoom installed on it, because what we do in the visit is typically in the opening meeting, that's done. We're using a laptop on the company side, but what we find is very convenient, very important to doing one of these visits is that once that opening meeting is concluded, ready to go on the tour, that the facility contact that's going to be conducting the tour, have open Zoom on their phone, to continue the visit. We also want to make sure that there's internet connection within all areas of the facility that we're going to access during the visit. So one of the things that we do before the actual date of the virtual visit is to conduct a practice session with the company, just to help them become more familiar with sharing documents, using those capabilities of Zoom or Teams for sharing documents, ensuring that they have good internet access around the facility, maybe do a little bit of a walkthrough to the areas we want to be able to access. The other thing that we learned by experience is that you need a way to signal, back and forth, that there's some kind of issue that's developed, such as the loss of audio or even video, during the call. So we address that. That's a little further on in this document. Let's move on to the next section, is what we call at the start of the site visit. One of the key things here is making sure that the facility person has disabled Bluetooth, on their phone or tablet. We learned that the hard way on one visit where, fortunately, it was a practice visit, where the person at the facility, their phone decided to hook up to their Bluetooth in their car as they were going, along outside of the facility to show us some things. And it's also useful, for the facility staff person to bring a flashlight with them. If you end up we all know that there's likely to be parts of a facility that are not lit very well, or just to help be able to get close-ups on looking at labels. Let's see, moving on. Next slide, Jack. Thank you. And I guess a couple of things here. This is really more towards the use of the phone. We found that applications like FaceTime and for an iPhone, or Duo for an Android phone is really not necessary. I mean, as long as the person has a phone, that they basically all do, where you can set the camera, to be forward facing. rather than the standard selfie view, it works fine. As long as they move the phone or the tablet, slowly and deliberately, to avoid any kind of blurred images. But usually with a little practice, that turns out to be very easily done. I'm noticing for the sake of time, I'm going to skip the next slide and just go on to the next one, please, Jack. So the assistance that we've done to date, we've had 3 virtual visits at several different facilities. Because of our confidentiality, I can't identify the names of the facilities, but just want to outline, the types, size. We've looked at large facilities, some small facilities. Just put a quick indication of the type of assistance we were providing on that particular visit. One of the other things, though, that we discovered in developing this approach is that in addition to being able to do a visit with a tour on a facility, virtual meeting capabilities are very useful. Even in the case where you're not actually doing a tour, but they provide the ability to have greater information sharing, with the facility than you would like in a normal phone conversation. So this is something that we're also beginning to use, again, showing the kind of facilities we've done it with and the kind of issues that we're addressing in those contacts. So to wrap up, what do we learn? I mean, what are the big takeaways that we have found from this? And I guess the important one is that remote assistance, it works. We've been able to, in doing our virtual visits or virtual meetings, been able to, achieve what we set out to do. There is a learning curve. There's some trial and error, but we didn't find any issues to be insurmountable that would, prevent us from getting it done. There definitely is a lot more preparation required for doing a remote visit as opposed to a typical on-site visit. And that communication with the company is really vital, especially in the upfront planning, where you are determining, what exactly is going to be the purpose of the visit, what are you going to look at on the visit, getting the required information up front from the company. That's going to be key going into the visit, and then making sure the company is really familiar with how you're going to be conducting the visit, in terms of the technology, and that's where we find that that instruction sheet is been very useful for companies. We also found out that the technology that that's out there to be used for visits is not really an issue. I mean, companies typically are already using Zoom, predominantly Zoom, maybe Teams. The cameras on phones and tablets are easy to use. They provide good quality. I mean, we've had no problems with facilities zooming in on a label on containers and being able to read it very easily. But doing a practice visit is really important. Even though companies are using Zoom or Teams, they're not always all familiar with all the capabilities that you want to use, such as the screen sharing. And one of the things that we also like to do with them when it comes to that is use some of the annotation features that are available through Zoom, with documents that are on the screen. Getting people familiar with using a headset, and then using the camera. It takes a little discipline on the part of the person conducting the tour to have that more measured motion of the phone so that you don't have any blurring or issues with the phone quality, with the video quality. And then lastly, you're going to find that you're going to be fine-tuning your protocol, based on your visit experience. So, that really goes into the fact that this was a bit of a learning curve for us, but we felt that as a result of doing a number of visits, we've been able to put together a very good protocol, for continuing this, and that's what we're going to be doing. I mean, we plan on moving forward on doing virtual visits, virtual meetings, as we move into the future. So I'd like to say again, thanks to EPA for the invitation to present today. This is how you can get in touch with us. Feel free to do so. And I think at this point, I am handing it back to Meredith.
All right, so Michelle Gaither is up next.
Good morning, everyone, and hopefully my screen is showing up properly.
Yes, looks good.
Excellent, thank you. So I don't want to repeat a lot of what Jack and John have presented, but there is a little bit of repetitiveness or redundancy here. So there are, I'll just jump in. We have, different ways of doing this. There's a real-time or live streaming where you're walking through during an online meeting, you're walking through and remote participants are able to observe and ask the questions. There's pre-recorded options, and I'll talk about that in a minute. You could not even have recordings and just look at still images and data and process diagrams and that sort of thing and just review in a meeting, or you can kind of do a hybrid of all of the above. Here are some remote video and platform options. So if you're doing a live streaming presentation or a meeting, obviously a smartphone and tablet, and I have some tips listed on the right-hand side here. We're finding that a stabilizer is going to be helpful for people who are not experienced videographers. A landscape view is is helpful because you usually see a bit more. One instance we were going through a beverage manufacturer, and it was a very tough situation to relay from the remote participant, to the person doing the camera, to talking to the staff doing the operations, and then back again. It was like, telephone tag. And so we had a thought that, there could be one person on a camera and one person for voice to make things a little bit better for the remote participants.
Hi,
Yeah.
Michelle. Just
Yes.
wanted to let you know that the slide hasn't advanced yet. We're still on the hybrid slide.
Oh, thank you. I'm so sorry. Okay.
No worries.
All right. I was doing it on my on my PowerPoint file. Okay. So hopefully now you understand what I'm talking about. Sorry. Okay. And then we have, the pre-recorded footage. There's the little stationary cameras. Some can pan and tilt and zoom, and you can record operations for a lot longer period of time, get an idea of what's going on in that operation, and you can time lapse to watch things on a little bit speedier manner prior to the Zoom meeting or whichever meeting you're having. And then live pre-recorded footage, there's an option to use these type of sports cameras and carry that around. We cannot figure out a way to directly connect that sport camera to a Zoom meeting. So I don't think that's, unless somebody else has figured it out, that's not really a viable option to use while you're, for a live stream type walkthrough. Meeting platforms, we all probably know what those are, but one lesson that I had heard from somebody is to go ahead and use what the client knows, as far as are they a Skype client, and if you can adapt to that. And also in one of our assessments, we couldn't get the connections working, so we had to quickly switch from a Zoom to an MS Teams meeting. So there are many benefits of going virtual. Some couple of minor limitations. This was mostly comments from a state. In Oregon, PPRC operates the EcoBiz auto certification program, and this was the Oregon DEQ couldn't be at the auto shop for the walkthrough. So here's some of his comments, and I thought they were really important, and also I expanded it beyond an auto shop. But so you can't use your sense of smell, you can't use your sense of touch, you can't use a sense of hearing in some cases, especially when there's a lot of background noise. And I discussed that phone relay situation we went through in one of our assessments. There's some visual limitations, and I'll show the fluids and spills on the ground in a video clip in a few minutes. Airborne dust or aerosols. Sometimes you are seeing narrow, unfocused panning, quick panning views, so the quality is not the greatest for people looking at a remote. It's harder to interact with site personnel and see their personal reactions to questions. And it may be difficult to see the overall housekeeping quality. And of course, we can't see labels very well. That's why those are good things to have in a picture format. Now I'd like to, oops, oh, sorry, screen issues here. So the pre-walkthrough information really allows a more efficient and comprehensive outcome from a visit. If the client is able and willing to provide that data, it's great. And I'm going to go through a bunch of examples in a few minutes here. But I strongly encourage it because it really kind of gives them more skin in the game. But if it doesn't happen before, that's okay. We understand companies are busy and maybe they can't provide everything you're asking for. So there's always chance afterwards in the debriefing to arrange for additional data gathering. All right, let's go through a bunch of examples. Oops. So we have floor plans. We could do a very detailed one, or if it's just they just want to put together a real basic one, or something that's actually covering a specific, like water, just following a water process through the plant, like a mass or like a water flow balance type thing. And if all else fails, at least get those written process steps down so you kind of know what you're doing as you go through the walkthrough. Here's a couple other things to do. Plan your floor plan and your route. Aerial views are helpful. You can look at nearby water bodies, maybe conditions of the roof, outdoor junk and storage piles that may be causing stormwater issues, and other things you guys would probably identify as easily or better than I would. So pre-walkthrough, of course, utility data bills, sub-metering data if they have it. Equipment control panels can provide a little bit of useful information, SOPs, and any permits, especially if the company is having approaching some limits or having intermittent violations. So here's what I would like to ask clients if, in future walkthroughs is, where is your pain? Can you please show us some examples of that before we go into this? So here's a seafood processor that loses all of this battering product from the vibrating alignment of the products, and that just has to go into the compost bin. They can provide defect or yield information. That's helpful. And this is one of my favorite case studies from a lean and environment project we helped with Canyon Creek in Monroe, Washington. And here's an ergonomic situation where the employee is bending over trying to look for defects and rework them and patch them before they go through the paint process. Well, she's also blocking the light. So You know, look for ergonomics, block lighting. Maybe the client already knows that's an issue, and they're just trying to explain that to you in a picture. And by the way, this company saved $208,000 a year by hanging these cabinet doors in a on a crane type system and improving their lighting. It was a great case study. So here's things that you could go, like photos of nameplates on larger energy equipment, hazardous waste labels, SDSs. I know OTA already mentioned a lot of this. Scrap piles, leaks, and the picture to the right is chemicals we found at one person's workstation. Holy moly. And I'm gonna turn my volume up. This is a super blurry because my phone didn't do a good job of transferring to the computer, but it is a water spewing out of it's hot water actually. So it's a big energy loss and just continually going down the drain. So little short videos like that, I know it's a horrible video, but can be easily emailed versus like, you know, several minutes of something. It makes the file too big to email it. Okay. Here's some other things important to capture, processes that are not going to be viewable during your particular walkthrough. Here is, you know, paint change outs, color change outs, that sort of thing. Tank cleaning after, say, a brewery runs a batch. That kind of stuff may or may not be able to be captured during your walkthrough. And the picture to the right is every single night, this food processor had to cover their equipment with this plastic, and that plastic is just going into the, straight into the garbage. They didn't even recycle the plastic. And so, you know, there's things that the client may understand are issues and not know how to resolve them. And these things are helpful for TAPs to understand before we do the walkthroughs. Here's a bunch of different equipment. PPRC ourselves do not have any of these items, but if the company does and they can gather data beforehand, that's great. And I think I was on a webinar with TMAC, and they talked about actually loaning some of this equipment out to clients beforehand so they could get some data beforehand. Several of us are going to work on putting another tip sheet together in addition to what OTA has already showed you today. So here's what we're going to cover: the initial planning meetings, dry run checklists, day of walkthrough checklist, debriefing, and next steps. And so if anybody wants to throw in ideas, I'm more than happy to collect them and include them in our tip sheet as we move forward. Okay, I'm now going to do a few short video examples, and if you will bear with me, I have to actually turn my volume up, and I'm going to, because you guys need to be able to hear a couple of things in these videos. And just, I would say the second video is, they're very short. The second video is about this ultrasonic cleaner that an EcoBiz auto shop just installed, and they're getting rid of a solvent-based parts cleaner and using a safer choice product in this ultrasonic cleaner. And it looks like it's just gonna work just beautifully for them. And the final video is super blurry, but just bear with it. It was actually a video of a video that we did at a beverage manufacturer. So I might have to switch. I need to figure out how to get my Meredith. I'm in slideshow view, and I don't know how to get back to my my volume. Can you help me?
I think last time when you did it on the computer, it worked to turn it up as well.
Yeah.
On your keyboard, I mean.
Okay, my apologies for, okay.
Let's just try, Michelle, and I can let you know if it's too quiet, the videos.
How do you flip this?
There should be.
I'll just,
We're still only seeing the slide. We just heard the video play a little bit though.
Oh, you can't hear it?
No, we
Michelle,
could
I think
hear
you
it.
need
We
to hit
can't-
escape.
I'm sorry, what?
Try hitting escape to get out of slideshow mode.
Okay. Oh, I'm so sorry, everyone. What now what are you seeing?
We're still seeing the slide that says few short video examples, so I think you might have advanced on the wrong PowerPoint.
Okay.
Give us one moment.
Okay, are you seeing the blue circles?
No.
Oh, shoot.
Remember earlier when it was advancing on the wrong version?
Mm-hmm.
I think that might be happening again.
Oh, darn it.
Here, let me restart the presenting, so that might help fix it. Okay, so if you accept the presentation again, Michelle, there we go. Now we're seeing,
Now you
the
see.
blue circles.
Okay, thank you. Apologies, everyone.
Yep.
Okay.
how do you flip this?
There should be.
I'll just,
So then we tried to use the phone without being able to see what was on the camera, and had to switch to a tablet. Okay. Oops, here's the ultrasonic cleaner.
You might want to step back 1 or 2 feet.
Just having to
There
practice
we go. Yeah, great.
focusing and that sort of thing. So here's where you're seeing challenges for the camera people.
a wash bay if we need to. And I haven't used it very much, but we were looking at some alternative stuff, and this is what
This is some re-refined oil system that the auto shop had just put in. Oops.
the thing for all the re-refined oil. So this is that new tank that I got, and so then it has the secondary containment under. So that was new. So I got all that from Emerald Recycling. So it's all in-house re-refined oil. So it's pretty cool. So they pick up your old oil and then they sell it back to you. So
That's great.
Here's an example of where it'd be good to be a little bit closer to, so we could actually see how much drag out was happening. And this is the blurry one, I'm sorry, but just bear with it. There you see fingers in front of the camera. That happened a lot in the instances that we've had. So anyway, hopefully those are helpful little snippets of things that, just to watch out for from a camera person's perspective. And finally, Jack and John already mentioned debriefing with the participants, but in my opinion, it's so important to do it immediately following while all this is fresh, because probably everybody who's done P2 assistance or assessments gets out of the assessment, and it's really hard to remember every little detail that happened. So discussing those issues and revelations that the client may have realized themselves during the walkthrough are very helpful at that point. And then of course, I always love to, even though you don't have all the data needed to make these conclusions, but I love this prioritization matrix. And if you have a bunch of things that you've identified as possible possible solutions or opportunities, you can kind of put them on a little matrix like this to help guide the future work based on the findings of the assessment. And lastly, here is it's now time for Q&A, but here's our contact information again, and the 2 slides the OTA provided. There's also 2 webinars on EPA site. Actually, the first one is still pending to be posted, but that was TMAC, Life City, and New Mexico State University provided some useful information on virtual assessments also. So with that, I open it up for Q&A and I look forward to hearing your questions.
Michelle, we're just still on the debrief and matrix slide, so we just need to click through one more.
Oh, sorry,
There
I'm a
you
little bit technically challenged, people. I'm sorry. Okay, now Q&A.
Great, so I think we're going to do one last poll just to see what you all are taking away from this. So I'll launch that now. So please go ahead and vote. We'd love to get your thoughts. And you can select more than one if you like. And while people are voting, feel free to type in any additional questions or to raise your virtual hand. We'll take questions in just a moment. All right, here are the poll results. This is great. So Natalie, over to you for Q&A.
Sure, this is Natalie. If anyone has any questions, you can just indicate that now. Turn yourself off mute.
Okay, in the chat box, we have received a few questions. One is for, I think, OTA and probably PPRC also, if you've had any pushback about using a camera in a facility. We've had some facilities that don't allow cell phones, or have you run into any that say they don't have the technology?
I have not. This is Michelle, and so I defer to OTA.
Yeah, this is Jack. I had one instance with a person who was, they didn't allow cell phones in the plant because it was all explosion-proof equipment. But what they did was they went in after the plant had shut down for the week and went in and took some pictures and sent them to us that way. So we were able to at least see pictures of the equipment, but not actually get in and see it running.
Yeah, this is John. The virtual visits that I've been on, no issues regarding using a camera. Whether it's on a phone, or in one case we had somebody that was using a laptop. Wasn't the optimum as far as the ability to use a camera, but again, there was no issues regarding having anything filmed.
And Laura, it's Natalie. My chat for some reason I don't see the question. So if you can monitor the chat, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Sure, great, thank you. So another question, is there a particular way virtual visits are reported out? For example, video, photo review, virtual meetings, on-sites, etc.
From PPRC's perspective, we are typically not going to be sharing the video with anybody other than like little snippets, which I showed today. But other than that, it's standard operation. After that, we always do the pollution, the recommendation report with brief analysis of where the savings might come from. You know, you need more data to actually do that, but it's your typical report out afterwards.
Yeah, and this is Jack from OTA. Typically, we would send out a detailed report at the afterwards, you know, noting what we saw, possible changes that could be made, that type of thing. We do not do any videotaping or any recording of the tour itself, just due to the confidentiality that we have to maintain by law. So we just don't want to take the chance of there being anything around that if somebody were to try to get a hold of some information, it'd be there. So we are not recording anything and only responding by a confidential document that we send back to the company.
And obviously, I would, if they would record for, you know, for PPRC's perspective, I find it super helpful. As I mentioned, I kind of may have missed a detail or something, and it's nice to be able to review that recording. Now, one of our beverage plant manufacturer, it was a 3-hour walkthrough, so that'd be a long recording to review, but you know, you can always flip forward, fast forward.
Thanks, everyone. We're getting right at the hour. I think we have maybe time for one more question. And this one was about the practicality of virtual visits when you're doing compliance sampling. Some POTW treatment programs require high frequency inspection sampling events. So is the remote visit option practical? Any thoughts on this?
Not from my perspective. If I'm curious to know if the plant itself normally does the sampling, or if in cases where that compliance is up, you know, coming up to at the point where it needs to be done by the city or the inspector. So I can't really answer to that question. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and we at OTA are completely non-regulatory, so we don't get involved in that aspect of it. I think from just kind of a thought process, if it was some type of sampling that needed to be witnessed or needed to be seen, then I think it would work great for some type of enforcement agency to be able to look at a video and see the person actually pulling the sample, labeling it, putting information on it. You know, I don't know what type of chain of custody things they're involved in or anything like that, but you know, from that aspect, that's just kind of what I kind of thought of offhand.
Yes, I would suggest talking to, you know, the POTWs or other agencies that would require those kinds of compliance sampling and see what kind of approaches they're taking.
Okay, great. Well, I think we're at the hour. I guess if anybody wants to stay on, we can stay on for a few more questions.
This is Natalie again from EPA. I want to thank everyone for joining today, and kindly refer to the webinar page that we have set up. You can learn a lot about different issues related to P2 measurement, technical assessment, and our national emphasis program areas as well. And we will be working on a tip sheet like Michelle indicated, and we hope to have that circulated to the group soon. So we really appreciate your participation today, and I hope you really walked away with some good information.
Yeah, great. And if anybody wants to reach out to OTA, feel free to send us an email, and we'll be sure to answer it.
Great. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Take care now.
All right, take care.
Bye.
Thank you.